Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Get connected, Fitchburg. Sign up for Fitchburg Connect, the city's monthly e-newsletter that keeps you informed about all the events, services, and updates that matter to you. Get it in your inbox once a month. Sign up today to get Fitchburg Connect.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is August 13th at 6:31, and this is the regular monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. I will note for the secretary that all commissioners are here except for Margaret Hutter and Alder Gerhardt, who are absent with excuse. There are no members of the public with us tonight. So we will move on to approval of the minutes. I move to approve. Okay, thank you, Rick and Ariel. Are there any updates or changes anybody would like to propose?
Can I ask a question about it, or is that like not?
I think that would be in order.
Last month we had a presentation from a member of the public about the Agora and especially farmers market and such.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything anyone is following up on from that? Is it on him to pursue any additional changes there?
I think that what the discussion was that these were very interesting and relevant suggestions, and that we should put them in the hopper for the safety action plan. Is that your memory?
Basically, I think it wouldn't surprise me if East Sherrill did not come up in the safety action plan, and if it does, we would approach it that way, and if it doesn't, we would approach it more as a quality of life improvement for a special event in Fitchburg, which won't really show up in the safety action plan necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's on, staff has it,
My concern is that there's a gap in the bicycle and pedestrian network that you can't get from the middle of that path over to the Agora. You can get off the path at the two intersections at each end of the block, but now you're in the street biking and you might not prefer that.
Yeah.
So
when I looked at the minutes, I thought, well, what's gonna happen? Like we talked about it, but then what happened? So safety action plan makes sense as
I think that well, the other thing that's happening is that I've given the mayor a draft of a Fitchburg Greenway system resolution that now Eric, Parks Director, is reviewing, and that calls for master planning and eventually filling gaps and extending the network with new development and into underserved neighborhoods and so on. So if that passes, then you can clearly say, oh, here's a gap in the network that can be addressed. All right, that's enough discussion on that. All in favor of adopting as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It was unanimous. On to, oops, I'm looking at the minutes instead of the agenda. Okay, staff.
All right, so first of all, comprehensive safety action plan. Proposals are due August 31st, 2026. I've had multiple questions from multiple firms. I'm expecting at least 3 proposals, hopefully more. I've had several meetings and I have more tomorrow. So there's good interest there. 2026 street resurfacing, Research Park is paved, it needs paint, and then next we're completing Belmar and Tower Hill. Those are streets that we did water main and storm work on, so those are getting paved after that work is all done.
Question on that?
Yeah.
Research Park, are there 2 lifts already?
Yes, asphalt is complete.
Okay, and you'll open it before or after paint?
It is both.
Because there's parking paint and then is there any center line paint or stop bars?
There's center lines, stop bars, turn lanes, turn arrows, and parking stalls. So it's open now, and it'll be open for the Agora Art Fair this weekend.
Oh,
And then we will
like that.
most likely close it again on Monday
To
to paint
paint
it, and it'll be closed during the day on Monday, and then reopened probably Monday night.
That's great
when the
news.
paint's dry.
Okay, you said then Tower Hill?
Yeah, Belmar and Tower Hill are the water main and storm streets, and then Fish Hatchery Road, they've torn up the portions of the path that they're replacing. I think they still need to do concrete and then the asphalt for that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because it's been torn up for a while, and obviously it's a key connection. Is there anything that they can do to, I understand the weather delays too, but is there anything they can do to not have it ripped up and impassable for so long?
We try to have them torn up for as little time as possible, but there's always parts of these projects that sit open for longer than we want them to.
Okay.
So part of it is that the concrete and the asphalt are different crews, and that coordination, even though it's the same contract, is always a pain.
Like on Research Park.
Yeah.
Plus 65 temporary stop. Goes back to permanent location after paint.
Yes, so we will, I don't know that we've coordinated with Metro yet on that, but we'll probably give, whatever the minimum time for changing that stop is back to its normal route.
Oh, okay. So, because the business obviously would like it
They're
gone as soon
eager.
as possible.
Yep, yeah. So it would be whatever the minimum time is to get it back to its route. Metro wants, a certain amount of notification for route location changes or stop location changes.
Hopefully we don't have to go through that new process.
No, this is a much smaller, construction does not go through that.
And then, fortunately, the 2 stops are catty corner across from each other. So that'll make things easier in case somebody goes to the wrong place.
Yep. 2026 sidewalk replacement was supposed to start this week. It didn't. It'll start next week. Fitchburg Road, we are doing tree clearing and utility relocation starting on Monday. So we'll have several meetings next week about that. Also working with the DNR and KL Engineering on redesigning one of our walls for the bike path under the Military Ridge State Trail Bridge, and working on how we're going to deal with that bridge during construction. County Highway MM bike and pedestrian underpass. I've had several meetings with the developers and with the designers, but we have a public involvement meeting on August 27th at 5:30 at Fire Station 3 on Cyan Road, just a mile or two from this project location. So we'll go over kind of the design and construction timelines at that public meeting.
There are no real options for the public to weigh in on, right? I mean, they can complain about the design, but you're not showing them 2 different alternatives of anything.
No, this is
It's
just
pretty
the underpass. I mean, one thing they could talk about is, precast versus cast in place concrete structure and, cost and stuff like that. But we're pretty locked into the underpass design. Whalen Road paved shoulders, that will be starting in the next 2 weeks. Payne and Dolan is supposed to have a scheduling meeting early next week to decide when they want to tackle that.
Will there be any lane closures or flaggers or anything like that happening along that route?
There may be some flagging. It depends on what equipment they have available to do that work. I think most of it should be able to be done in the shoulder, and they will probably only need to flag when it's kind of in a weird location going over a hill where sight is limited. Traffic and safety stuff, we've daylit several path entrances in like Seminole Ridge and Seminole Highlands neighborhoods. There's just a lot of spots where a bike path hits the street and then doesn't go anywhere after that. So we've kind of marked on both sides with yellow curb paint just to kind of help visibility, and then it also added some path crossing signs there, even though the path doesn't technically cross. An update on the Research Park speed limit pilot. So last time I had a little bit worse data than this. The data has gotten a little bit better as we've expanded our time frame. It was only like 2 days of data last time, and now it's 2 weeks. So the 85th percentile speed in that first round was 25 miles an hour, and now it's 24 miles an hour. So we've dropped by 2 miles an hour with a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit decrease. So
Volume is higher.
volume is higher.
Continues to support my theory that this was a good place for 20 miles an hour because of the road is already has a slow design with the curb parking and the curvature.
How much longer does this pilot last?
We haven't really set an end date. It could be whenever.
Years and years.
Yeah.
So the 90-day police powers that we can use to make temporary changes can be it can be checked out again like renewing a library book.
Exactly.
Or like renewing a war.
Hopefully not quite like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're still working on that ordinance to
Be able to change speed limits more easily.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of somewhere in process, but not priority.
After the TIA and Vision Zero stuff, that's my next big kind of admin ordinance priority. So that and truck routes. Also, I attended the ITE Great Lakes and International Conference in Detroit. ITE is Institute of Transportation Engineers. I attended sessions on human-centered mobility, innovative intersections, and selling them to the public. I did a workshop on updating the ITE Neighborhood Street Design Manual, sessions on holistic street upgrades, that's basically complete streets. And then I did a Belle Isle walking tour, which is a big state park in Detroit that the roads are all screwed up because they used to have the Detroit Grand Prix there for IndyCar.
No, F1 was there.
Oh, okay. Well, they were talking about IndyCar, but I didn't know they had F1. So the streets are super wide and built for very, very, very high speeds.
More than 20.
What's the design speed?
Yeah.
280 miles an hour on the street.
So they're basically working through, fixing that because the Grand Prix is not there anymore. And then also the Detroit People Mover Tour. It's kind of a old school monorail kind of tourist loop thing they have there. It's pretty cool, but it's kind of limited for like commuter use.
How long is it?
It's a couple mile loop. Yeah. So, happy to talk about that later. Learned a lot of cool things. A lot of cities are doing comprehensive safety action plans right now. So that was very nice to be able to see some that were in progress or had completed and use that for our own process. And that's my staff report.
Thank you. Any questions for staff about anything in the staff report? Okay, so that brings us to council item. We will start out with a motion to approve, and then we'll discuss it. get the staff report and discuss it?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so Ross, if you would kick this off.
Yeah, so we've obviously seen this before here at TTC, but this is a new requirement in our ordinances, creating a requirement for traffic impact analyses for new developments, and it amends several sections of our ordinances to basically make it clear where we expect a TIA to be submitted and make that enforceable. So new developments in the city are already required to submit a TIA, but like I said, this is common practice in most municipalities in Dane County. Ordinances are vague about when and how these TIAs are required. So this ordinance change and the accompanying guidelines, which the guidelines are not actually being adopted, those are just guidelines. The ordinance change saying you need a TIA is what's being adopted. Guidelines will give staff a standard review procedure and make reviews faster and more consistent, and basically make it clear to developers how much money they will have to spend on a TIA, because that's always the sticking point, is they know they need a TIA, but
They want a
what
cheap
level is where we get into the weeds a little bit with them.
This will be a staff favorite.
Yes.
Is that why it's already marked on the referral sheet as approved tonight?
Well, that's a good point. I think that's supposed to be at Board of Public Works, so. I think Jamie is probably used to the first one on there being Board of Public Works, so.
Okay. So it was approved on
Yes,
August 3rd by
It was
them.
approved at Board of Public Works unanimously. So, I can go through any questions or any more detail
So
you
is this
want,
any
but-
changed from the one we previously saw?
No, there's some grammar changes, but nothing.
Okay, and this was not redlined, I didn't see any red lines on this.
No,
Okay.
no, the changes were extremely minor.
Okay, so, I think that, first of all, are there any comments on the ordinance itself? Do you have that
Bring that
on
up.
there?
I do have a comment.
Okay, why don't you tee it up?
And I watched the section on the Public Works meeting on this, which helped me understand the part we're approving and the part that's informative. And this is the only part we're approving are these changes. So then, is it correct to interpret that text that's in bold are the things that change over the existing ordinance?
Correct.
Okay, so this whole thing is already an ordinance in the city of Fitchburg, and the changes that we would be voting on are simply the bold text that's there.
Exactly. So basically how we require TIAs right now
Mhm.
is that the city engineer, Tim Volker, has very broad authority to require basically anything he wants to when a new development is submitted before he approves it. And we're just specifying that a TIA is one of the things he needs to
Okay.
approve it.
And then how does this ordinance point to the guidelines? That's in section 3 is how it like refers to the guidelines? That
So yes, and then in section 1, there's also a reference to the guidelines.
All right. One case
but-
is capitalized as an official thing and the other it's not.
Yeah.
All right.
But really, there's no actual need for this to point to the guidelines. The guidelines will be made available on the city website and will be shared with the development community. And then if we make any changes, that'll be updated on the website and shared with developers.
Okay. And because I watched that Public Works meeting, my observation was that there was also a lot of discussion about what was and wasn't in the guidelines and all of this, and I realized, well, we're not actually approving or not approving the guidelines themselves. And so maybe my question should be saved for later, but it was more about what would be the change process from the guidelines that exist today if
These guidelines that are
That it
They're in our packet.
that it points to the guidelines, right? So what would be like if somebody said, oh, I want to change the peak hour trips from 50 to 60 or something, like how will that be changed? Is that through these commissions, or is it just the staff decides like, let's change this number? Like, what's the process for that?
It's a staff decision. So it would not need to go through TTC, Board of Public Works, or Common Council, and that's by design. So
City engineer signs the new draft as approved.
yes.
I remember that the city engineers signed those old minimum parking requirements, and it would be like that, right?
Yeah.
A couple other questions and I'll stop. When this goes into effect, assuming it does, then any in-flight developments, does it cause them to be subject to this? Because the ordinance shall take effect the day after publication. So if I'm a developer and I'm still seeking approval, will I be immediately subject to this ordinance and the TIA requirements?
So staff is already using these TIA guidelines, and we're sharing them with developers that have submitted developments while this has been in process, because the city engineer can require whatever he wants, not whatever he wants, but basically. So we have just made that a requirement to follow these new TIA guidelines already.
Yeah, okay.
And then this ordinance is just making it extremely clear that this is what we're requiring.
And is the document that are the TIA guidelines a recent document?
Yes.
Okay.
So I created them right before the last time we reviewed them at TTC. That was the first, not the first draft, but the first public draft of them.
So prior to that, the city had nothing, or the city had?
City had nothing.
Okay. Yep. That was my questions about this. Now that I understand the guidelines and the ordinance, two different things, what we're voting on is the ordinance.
And to go back to your comments on the guidelines part, I think that is fair game in this discussion, because I included them in the packet for that reason. And you're right, it's not what we're voting on, but it is relevant to approving the ordinance, I think.
Yeah, because I guess if you think about it, if the guidelines are so out of whack that we don't want to, if Ross is so off base here, we may not want to do it.
Yeah.
Not the case, but.
So I have 3 or 4 detailed guideline things, and I have one we gave, President of Lake Fitchburg referred to the guidelines, but not the ordinance, to another member who is an attorney. And so he's very good at reading things and making sure they're internally consistent. And so we should make sure there's nothing more on the ordinance before we get into the guidelines. This seems very, very easy to me. Speaking of the ordinance, anybody want to talk about it anymore?
Do we, since we have a motion, and the motion is about the ordinance change, do we vote on that and then have
I'm
a
going to
discussion
hold that
about
off
the
until we have our guidelines discussion, and then we'll vote on the ordinance. If that makes sense to everybody? We can do it a different way too. All right, let's have any comments. And so what'll happen here is it's up to staff, but if we provide feedback, I am sure that staff will duly consider it, and it may be brilliant and adopt it, and it may be petty and ignore, or somewhere in between. So who wants to go first? The chair will recognize you.
I can jump in. I've got
Go for it.
3 questions or items. On page 10 of the guidelines, it's talking about the level of service waiver, where it says staff can approve the waiver, and I believe the answer
Motor
to
vehicle level of service?
yes.
Okay, page 10 of what?
Of the guidelines.
So it's in motor vehicle level of service.
Well, it's, yeah, 10 of,
I got it.
LOS is on that page.
I think
Yep.
so.
So it's the black page numbers.
One's at the
Yes,
bottom.
yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, it says that staff can approve a level of service waiver. And is that unilateral? That would not require, commission or council approval for those waivers?
Correct. So with the TIA process, that would be a staff decision. All of these developments would still go to plan commission as they do now.
I didn't write down a page number for
Okay, that's, I want to just stop you for a second. You're talking about the variance to allow LOSD?
Yes.
Okay. So they call it a variance, not a waiver.
Okay.
I was scanning for waiver at first, no avail.
The next one I had, and I didn't write down a page, but I think it's on the same one. The quote was, motor vehicle level of service, pedestrian level of service, and bicycle level of service sometimes conflict with pedestrian and bike features lowering motor vehicle level of service and vice versa. In that case, priorities shall be established by city staff. I'm just curious if you have any guidance on how city staff will determine and establish those priorities and make those decisions, and if there's criteria for that.
So there are no hard criteria for this, but staff being myself, I'm the one who reviews these TIAs, and at some points Tim might have a different opinion than I do on this, and he would govern here. But in my reviews on a local neighborhood street, bike and pedestrian features would have a higher priority than motor vehicle level of service if there's an obvious conflict. If we're talking about an arterial level street where we're not expecting that much bike and pedestrian activity, then we might, I might review in favor of motor vehicle level of service.
I'll interject there because that was one of the things that Noah Sunderman is the person commented on. He noted that in some, I don't know what the exact quote is, but at one point you say that the development shall not lower the motor vehicle LOS.
Mm-hmm.
At a different point, it says that the development should not lower the bicycle and pedestrian LOS.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's advocating for bicycles and walking, he said this doesn't seem fair. They should both be shall. And to your point, it seems like if there's a conflict according to that, if keeping or if maintaining or improving bicycle or pedestrian LOS would cause the motor vehicle LOS to go down, then you would not take that solution. You would preserve the motor vehicle LOS. So he points that out as a difference that should be questioned, and should they both be shall? If not, maybe a finer point on it, then cars always win.
Mm-hmm. I think making them both shall is difficult because, like we said, they do conflict. So there are some points, no matter which side of it you fall on, that one of the shalls will be
One of the
violated.
shalls. Okay, so
Or should they both be
What about-
shoulds?
what
Shall
about-
they both be shoulds?
what about favoring the vulnerable users that do not have a large encased steel frame around them?
Mm-hmm.
Make that one shall and motor vehicle should.
I think that is a fair statement. When we went around and did the bike and pedestrian levels of service for our existing intersections. Most of our existing intersections are below the requirements in these guidelines for bike and ped level of service. So knowing that and writing these, it was difficult for me to require of developers a higher level of service for bikes and pedestrians than we currently have at a lot of our existing intersections.
I think we should try to improve things.
These, and I'm saying these do improve
Okay,
things.
yeah.
And I agree that we should improve our existing intersections as well, but that's outside the scope of these guidelines.
All right, he also mentioned that he had conflicts. Let me read what he said here. He also caught a handful of smaller issues too, cross-references, a scope contradiction, gaps in what gets scored, but he was most concerned about this one. He has not communicated those to you, has he?
No.
All right, I will get him to send you his complete list so that you can evaluate whether any of the other ones are important.
And I think just for the gaps in what gets scored and what doesn't,
Yeah.
I made a conscious effort to make this as simple as I could of a scoring system. There's a lot of stuff we could give points for that.
I think that he was more, well, I'm only imagining, because you have the disclaimer there that there are, in both of them, that there are many things that are not scored, and you give examples, and I think that that's fair. So I'm thinking that maybe he said that there's some place in here that says that something is scored, and then later it turns out to not be, or vice versa. So I'll get him to send those detailed comments to you.
I think there is an error in the, it's kind of an inconsistency in the pedestrian level of service where it says crossing a 6-lane or something, the highest level of service it can get is a level of service E, and it doesn't clarify the role of like a refuge island in that crossing. That was a question at Board of Public Works. With our existing network was McKee and Fish Hatchery is a pedestrian level of service B, but it's obviously a 6-lane crossing.
You got two LOSB things to cross in sequence.
Exactly. So
similarly, if you have a pork chop island that the pedestrians or bikes have to cross twice, then I think that there should be somehow demerits for compound.
So
there's things like that.
You do get less points for a crossing with a refuge island than for a just shorter crossing.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, I stepped on you, Logan, if you want to get back to your list.
That is all right. I have one more quick one. And it sparked when I look at page 19 and we're talking about the pedestrian signal display, where we talk about the countdown timers. I was just curious if there are developments or there's instances where we don't by default require the countdowns.
So now, usually not. No, we would usually require the countdowns.
Okay. I was.
But on like say you're planning to in a rural street just not have pedestrian features, you would get scored lower for that.
Okay. I guess yeah, like a fish hatch and an M.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't imagine these TAA guidelines actually applying to a situation like that, but it's in there.
Okay. I just wanted to advocate that wherever possible, I think the countdowns are should be the defaults unless there is a very compelling reason, because it helps everybody, even the drivers. I think of if I'm driving and I see it's at 3 for the car, I know I'm gonna a yellow, so I'm gonna slow down instead of flooring it through the intersections.
There might also be some like retrofit situations where they're adding more traffic to an existing intersection that doesn't already have countdowns.
Jamestown Port.
Yes.
So that intersections getting all re-engineered, but there are already pedestrian things there. Now, I don't know whether they were countdown or not, but if they were not countdown,
I think they were not countdown and they now are, I believe.
I'm fairly certain they now are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Ariel?
I was just curious, is there any like timeline restrictions on, like if the developer does a TIA now and I don't know if they are doing part of the development now, but part years down the road, is there any restriction on how long the TIA is good for?
In these guidelines, no. The trigger for needing a new TIA would be like in a new phase of the development, if it didn't go according to their timeline, I would re-review the old one, and if the trip generation tables change drastically or their land use changes, then they would need to do a new TIA.
Maybe amend it.
Yeah, amended is the actual terminology. Like in Terra Vesa, most of the lots in a new phase in Terra Vesa follow the original TIA fine, but then there's always some that they're changing from, this was gonna be townhouses and now it's apartments. So if the trip generation changes, then I've been requiring a new TIA, just at that like lot level.
Anything else? Rick?
Yes.
Maybe.
On page 12, I'll jump to that one first. I realize my page numbers were. Here are a series of credits. And I was trying to think, like, what's the practical application of that? So if I'm a developer and I'm on the cusp between small and medium, and I say, I'll do something walking related, and that'll take me 2% down, and that'll get me from 51 to 49 or whatever the next threshold was. Is that how we're thinking these credits apply? Is it specifically related to peak hour trips? Is that the credit?
Yes, but they would not necessarily apply at that, like how big of a TIA do you need to do level. These would apply to the improvements you need to do to our road system when you actually build this infrastructure. So you could say, our 1,000 trips a day will reduce this intersection to a level of service D, and then we'll need to put in a traffic signal and do all this expensive work.
Okay.
But we're gonna build the street system in our neighborhood to have intersections to street segment ratio of 1.4 or greater, and then also put in a really nice bus stop and have it next to a bike path. And that will reduce our trips to whatever.
1,000 to 900 or something.
Yeah, 1,000 to 900, and that's a level of service C, so we don't have to put in a
Intersection.
traffic signal or whatever.
Okay, so it's an LOS credit. It's not a peak hour amount of TIA work that you have to do.
Right.
Credit.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
In theory, they could apply it at that level, but they're probably not gonna know
Well, that was
this level of design
right.
when they're at that pre-TIA
That was
stage.
what I was wondering. Okay, page 4, so you can go backwards. We have peak hour trips.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have anything that actually says daily trips, like the total volume of traffic at that location. And so you can imagine that a gas station, for example, has no more than 50 peak hour trips, but it has it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Is there any criteria for daily trips overall?
They have to submit daily trips in their trip generation tables, but there are basically no site types that you would, from a review standpoint, want to look at the daily trips instead of the peak hour trips. Because you're generally designing your road system for the peak hour.
Okay.
So even if, say, a gas station does not operate like this, gas stations are extremely heavy in the peak hours because people are on the roads at the peak hour and you just pull into the gas station.
That's when you use the gas.
Exactly. But on a site type that has a flatter curve, that like late, 8 p.m. traffic, say, doesn't matter as much because
Like a medical
the
clinic.
rest of the traffic on the road is much less.
But it's their
Because
peak
the
hours. Like, it's the peak hours for that specific
Mhm.
site, not for the city overall.
It's both. If the peak hour for the generator is different than the peak hour for the road, they have to submit that as well. But almost all of them are 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Oh, I see, okay.
Except for Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero
Because-
built their whole human resources system so that their shift changes are not in those conventional peak hours, that they have their own peak hours on Sub-Zero Parkway and Bud's Drive are at 5 a.m. and 8 hours.
1 and 2,
Yeah. And they did that so that they wouldn't have to do so they wouldn't have to put all that peak hour traffic through the Verona Road intersection.
Yep, that was a DOT, I don't know if it was a requirement, but request, and it worked.
Yep.
Related on this one, any consideration for vehicles that are not typical passenger vehicles, like every vehicle is a dump truck?
Like by the quarry or.
Yeah.
No, there are nothing for that in this.
Okay. Would staff?
We
view
build
it
the roads
differently?
differently.
Yes, so we would build the roads differently. Like our arterials and collectors have more asphalt and more base than our local roads because we expect truck traffic on those. And then like Commerce Park Drive is supposed to be a commercial street, so we expected a ton of truck traffic there. That's pretty overbuilt based on our normal street with that much traffic.
Oh, okay, okay. See a lot of trucks.
Because they're all dump trucks, and a lot of them are dump trucks and semis.
Okay, last question on this, and now I'm on page 2. See how I go backwards?
At least you're not jumping around.
There's a review process, or a paragraph about review process, and it talks about producing the TIA and submitting it to staff and how long staff have to review it. That doesn't, as far as I could see, there isn't anything in the guidelines that says when it would be rejected versus accepted, or if there was any kind of like, the developer has given me a TIA and I don't like what they've written. And so, is there thought about a situation when the developer has done all the work and submitted it to staff, and then staff says, I don't like your TIA?
So generally, TIA reviews are an iterative process. We get a first draft from the developer's engineer, and then we work directly with that engineer to say, this is an error or whatever, or we would rather this be a roundabout rather than a traffic signal, stuff like that, to more like kind of judgment calls from staff. And then if staff would generally not reject a TIA, we would give our requirements to the developer, and then if the developer thinks those requirements are too onerous or expensive, or they just don't want to do them, then the development probably wouldn't happen unless staff was overridden by Plan Commission or Council, which could happen.
That was what I was wondering, is maybe you don't like the TIA, but the developer says, I want to go ahead and I want this in front of Plan Commission and Council. Other than advice from staff that says, we really weren't that fond of this TIA, the Plan and Council can accept that and approve the development regardless of what staff says. They may never do that, but they could.
I believe so. I am not as familiar with our ordinances on, staff reviews versus when it gets to Plan Commission.
I can tell you though,
Does that
and
need to be an answer
Logan
to the
could tell you that when these things come before plan and then council, they get the initial submission, they get the public works and parks and other departments'
They get all our
responses.
comments,
They get the developer responds to all of those things. So they can say, we don't think this is a good solution, we're proposing this alternative, or we've incorporated your idea in our plan, and they go through all of those things. And then, if it's plan commission, then the plan commission can say, well, we don't think that your alternative is good enough, so we want you to comply with the staff requirement, or, and at some point the developer may, like Ross says, they might say, oh, I'm gonna build this in Verona, or they could compromise, they could spend more money. Usually that's what the criterion is they have a cheaper solution in mind.
And just as a sitting council member, I can say that if I'm looking through a development application and I see a strongly worded memo from Ross that says, this is going to cause traffic issues considering every development, I can't think of anything other than like a single family home in a rural part of Fitchburg, where somebody has not said, I'm concerned about adding more vehicles to the road. I think that would be taken quite seriously, and given a lot of consideration, given the public perception is already that I think it would be fair to say that any development adds too much traffic. And then there's the engineering side and the total peak hour trips. If that flag raises for Ross too, that's gonna, the hair on my back of my neck is gonna stand up here, and I'm gonna, oh, red flag.
Well, in my opinion, I think that that's the right place for it to get potentially rejected, and that it's not up to staff on their own to say, I'm not letting your development proceed.
Right.
You may have some harsh words for how they've approached the TIA or other areas of the development process, but that it could still go forward with that wording that elected officials have the judgment call as to whether to go ahead or not. So that's, I think, appropriate.
Frankly, that also happens at the staff level too, where I, suggest requirements and then some other members of staff say, can we soften this a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, or no, that one I really want to stick on. So it happens the whole way through the process, so.
That's it? All right, let's see, the ones that I have. So one of the questions I have is that when you are talking about however many 100 feet or how many miles that you have to consider all the intersections and roundabouts, that kind of thing, is that by road miles or as the crow flies? And does everybody understand that?
That is by road miles. So if we're in the pre-TIA process and I'm telling them what intersections they have to look at, a lot of times I will just draw a 1 mile radius on a map, and usually that encompasses everything.
Yeah.
And maybe later on we figure out that there's this intersection you should
Like
really
the
look at.
E-way, bollocks up, all of that kind of stuff, because you can't get there from here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, I have section numbers. So on the biking credit, where were those? I think that's the TDM credits.
12, yeah, page 12.
Okay. There we go. All right. So if the development is adjacent to a designated bike route in the bike ped plan, I'll call that A, and provides bike racks, I'll call that B, close to major entrances, or has off-street path connections to adjacent land uses, I'll call that C. So we have in there, you get the credit if you have A and B or C. And I don't know what the associative logic is there. and I would propose that what you need is A or C and B. In other words, we always want bike parking. But you could read this so that if you have off-street path connections to adjacent land uses, then you don't need to be adjacent to a designated bike route or have bike racks close to the main entrances. So,
yes, I think my intent there is what you said, where next to a designated bike route or have off-street path connections to adjacent land uses.
you have to have one of those and bike racks.
Yes.
So I would,
yes.
I
So
would
I
change,
will adjust that.
I would change that language. What's the next one? Was on the transit credit, just below it. And so we have situations where, and we're gonna have this around the intersection of McKee and Fish Hatcher and Trevorton. If the development is within a quarter mile of a transit stop with more than 20 bus trips per day, I would say something about you have more than 20 bus trips a day to all the transit stops within a quarter mile. If, you know, because you might have one stop that for a route that's going straight, and around the corner you have a different stop for the routes that are turning left at that point. This happens a lot in Madison, where there's a lot more buses going different places. But I do, you know, if you were gonna build where the women's reproductive health place is and put up a big thing there, we've got, we'll have the BRT stop there, but we'll also have the 75 stop on McKee right next door, you know, within the quarter mile. And so I just didn't know whether you wanted to count all the stops within a quarter mile or just.
So you're saying
be a single stop within a quarter?
all of the stops within a quarter mile add up to 20 trips, or all stops within a quarter mile need 20 trips each?
No, the former.
Add up to 20, okay.
Yep. So I don't know if you want to change that, but it occurred to me.
Okay, I'll just take a look at that metric and see, because I frankly don't know.
Whether it applies in our situation or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just a.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Go.
I was gonna say, to that point, since 65 and 75 cover a good geographic part of the city, but wouldn't meet the 20 or more trips per day, do we wanna consider having like a 2% trip reduction if you're on a peak hour route versus the 5% if you're on kind of the
All day, every day.
flagship, routes?
That's a good question. Hopefully that will be moved soon.
I'm not optimistic, given the future budget item,
So you're saying there could be a stop which is within a quarter mile, but because of the current bus schedule, they don't have 20
Yeah.
all day long. It doesn't add up to 20.
So anything in Terravesa or Swan Creek or
Twenty,
75, like the YMCA even, the 75.
Right.
I think my argument there would be that we want to give an advantage to developers who are doing the things in these credits, but we also need the trips that they're getting credited for to actually be absorbed by the bus system. So if they're not getting 20 trips a day, then we need to account for that number of drivers on the road in their road improvements, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
But I guess what you're saying is that a lower percentage would still accomplish that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was also
Alright.
thinking, related to that you have a bus stop in front of the library right there. And I have another one at the intersection of Research Park and Sherrill, which is less than a quarter mile.
Mhm.
So then I get to count them twice. I get to count 20 stops over there and 20 stops over there because they're within a quarter mile, based on what Steve said.
You know, we get to add up the stops
Right?
for
So
both
there's-
of them and see if it's over 20.
Right, but it's
But
the
you don't
same-
get two reductions if you have
Right,
20
it's
each.
the same bus.
Mm.
It's just a quarter mile from one stop.
Oh,
to
I
the
see
next.
what you're
They're
saying.
just on the
No, if
same
it's the same
route.
bus, you don't get to count
Right.
it.
I guess a better word for this would be, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
My last conflict is on bike LOS right turn conflicts, which is on page 28, letter E. And you point out in the text that it's really bad to have a right turn lane and the bike lane to the right of that. And it can be ameliorated a little bit by having a shared lane with through bikes and right turning motor vehicles or all vehicles. Or, but the best is if you have a separate bike lane to the left of the right turning motor vehicles. And I just don't want to see any more of those shared lanes because it's an uncomfortable or a high stress situation for the biker. Not so high stress as having the weave point and then having your own lane to the left of the right turners. So I was wondering if we could prohibit, you know, we're talking about pouring curb and gutter here, ask for that extra 4 feet every time. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe we can't do that, but could we get a bigger demerit for if there's no bike lane? Right now it's a -5. Like if we can make that -10 or -15 to really incent people to have the bike lane to the left of the right turn lane. So I'm asking for a heavier weighting.
Okay. I think to cover the first part, if it's a new approach to an intersection,
A new turn pocket.
right, on an engineering level, we would
You
almost
demand that.
never allow,
Okay.
we would never allow a bike lane to the right of a right turn lane.
Right.
There would have to be very extenuating circumstances to allow a bike lane into a shared bike and right turn lane.
Right.
And we would almost always require the bike lane to cross the right turn lane to get the right turn lane to the right of
Just
the
give you
bikers. But for a retrofit situation,
yeah,
where we have,
where you have a building.
yeah, a building there, or, you're building off of a stub that just wasn't designed
I'll
correctly.
give you a very
something like
concrete
that.
example.
Yeah.
Traceway coming east into Fish Hatchery. Going west, we have a lane for motor vehicles and a bike lane that ends soon. Coming east, however, we have a bike lane we have a parking lane there. And then it goes into a left turn lane and a shared through right turn and bike lane.
You're correct.
Yep. And so that is a high stress situation for bicyclists. And you can see that the high line is like cheek to jowl, and we already have a problem on the other side with utilities if we want to make a path there. So we're not going to get any more space. And we have a Sharrow, that's one of the few Sharrows we have, is to emphasize to both drivers and bikers that they're in there together. But I'm just trying to avoid that for future work, and that's why I was asking for higher weighting. But if engineers are already saying, oh, we're not gonna let you do that,
Yeah.
then I'm happy with it the way it is.
Okay.
That's all I had. All right, we love this stuff. bring it to us anytime you want to talk about it. But going back to the ordinance, I would say, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending adoption of the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimous. Thank you all. That brings us to discussion items. So Schumann Drive is next.
I've got a memo in your packet, kind of giving background on this situation, and then I've also got a PowerPoint that I'll go through. But just for background, Schumann Drive, Park Hill Circle, Seminole Glen Path, and Stoner Prairie Path all come to a kind of strange intersection that is used almost as much by pedestrians as it is by cars. There's also a lot of children who use this. It goes to the Seminole Pool, to Stoner Prairie School,
Middle school, elementary school.
and also the elementary school to the south, and a lot of parks. So especially in the summer, there's a ton of kids on this path. But the path crossing is staggered by about 100 feet where it hits the road. So the path on the south side is 100 feet to the west of the path on the north side. I have pictures later. So crossing the street here is a kind of strange activity to do. So we've had numerous resident complaints, unsuccessful community action request forms, and then District 4 Alder involvement. Staff feels that this location gives unique pedestrian safety challenges not captured in our normal traffic management process, and we are installing a quick build paint and post project at this location. It'll reduce conflict points, concentrate path users at a single intersection, and reduce confusion for drivers. So in this PowerPoint, I go through a couple of reasons to do quick build projects and then the actual issues that staff sees with this particular intersection. So just kind of primer on quick build infrastructure. These are cheap and can be installed immediately. I think I've waited a total of 3 weeks to get these posts, and that's the biggest time commitment here. Concrete is expensive, and it takes a few years in Fitchburg to fund and then to build. The building is actually usually quicker than figuring out the funding source for more expensive projects. So quick build, paint, and post is viewed as a stopgap until that actual concrete infrastructure can be funded and installed. And it's a way to provide visibility and safety enhancements now instead of waiting through our whole CIP or budget process. So this is the existing intersection. This is Park Hill Circle and Schumann Drive, are the two streets here, and then you can see where the paths come in. There's stop signs in front of both of the crosswalks. So one stop sign is basically in the middle of the intersection with Schumann and Park Hill Circle. Feels really weird when you stop there because you can see you're pulled up into Park Hill Circle basically. And then on the other end, you're just stopping at a mid-block crossing, but then you don't have to stop if you're coming the other direction. So you're only stopping once, no matter which direction you're going through here, even though there are two crosswalks a few hundred feet apart. I've got traffic stats here, 325 cars per day, 194 pedestrians per day, and that was in May. So in the summer, on a day where the pool has an event, there can be more pedestrians than this.
All city was out of sight. Can I ask a question about that stat?
Yeah.
Are bikes lumped in here?
Yes.
And
So in this, just for terminology's sake, since they're on a path, bikes are viewed as pedestrians in this study.
Okay, and then are the 194 all path users?
Yes.
So when I looked at this, and my comments will come out in a little bit, I face this generally as a Schumann Drive user on a bike, and I think that's a busy bikeway to get to, for example, the Badger or the pool. When we take bike rides through here, we're coming from the pool, we're going, or from the Badger, we're going to McKee Farms Park. We typically turn into Seminole Glen Park and then turn back out onto Schumann instead of going through Schumann. It's about the same distance, it's much more pleasant. But I experience this mostly as a Schumann Drive user on a bike. So I just wondered if you had any stats on bike and ped users on Schumann, because there are no sidewalks. Everybody that goes up and down Schumann on foot is walking in the street.
Yes, I do not have any good statistics on bike and ped users on the street because my counters can't differentiate between a bike or a pedestrian and a car.
Yeah, I have a counter for you. But we should talk about the outdoor version of the Telram counter, which would do that. You could put in a tree or a light pole up there. But getting back, continue please.
Yeah, so there's really not a speed issue here. Speed limit's 25, 85th percentile speed is 25, no issues there. The real issues are the crosswalk and stop sign configuration are confusing because they're not at the traditional places you'd expect them at an intersection. Drivers don't stop, or they, do a rolling stop because, even with 194 pedestrians, most of the time when you're coming up there, there's nobody in the crosswalk. And then also, bikes, there's stop signs on both of the path entrances to the street here that almost never get adhered to. In one direction, you're coming down a hill, so kids on bikes kind of shoot out into the street. I was standing here talking to the two alders and then a few parents, and one of their kids came down the hill into the street and got yelled at by their mom. So
Was that a
But
setup?
unfortunately, we don't have
it
them
couldn't
there
have been
all
a
the
better
time.
one, yeah.
It is one of the considerations for our solution.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, I think they
Hiring a
most of
7x24
them-
mom is going to be really steep.
So those are kind of our issues here and the problems I'm trying to solve. And then this next slide is a schematic of what we're gonna install here. So we started off, just to be clear here, with two 4-foot on-street lanes for a multi-use path. We have since expanded those to 5 feet for each lane, so a full 10-foot wide on-street multi-use path. Basically, the new way to cross this street, if you're a pedestrian using the path, so a bike or a pedestrian, is to come either north or south on one of these paths, turn onto this on-street path here, and then cross at this Park Hill Circle crosswalk. This green crosswalk here is only intended for bikes that are going to be turning left off of this northbound path. So if you're coming down here and you want to go straight to the pool instead of going through the park into the pool, or you have a house on this part of the road, you'd cross the street like you do now and bike in the travel lane to the west. But we're shifting the center line, the vehicle center line, over to accommodate that new path on the south side, and putting up flex posts to delineate the path versus drivers.
Okay, and then just go through coming from the park to the school.
Coming
Biking
from
up.
so southbound on the path?
Yep.
So you'd do the same thing in reverse. You'd come, south eastbound on this path, cross here at this crosswalk, and turn into the other lane of this two-way on-street path. You'd be biking or walking against traffic here, and then you would turn left to go south to continue on the path.
And so what if you came out of the park and you wanted to go west on Schumann?
If you came out of the park southbound and wanted to go west on Schumann, you would take the travel lane and continue on as you do right now.
And the travel lane is 14 foot wide, so it should be able to be, there should be a safe pass.
And no parking is allowed on this section either, on either side.
Now or in the design?
In the design.
Now there is.
Yeah.
Although we could probably daylight those paths, but.
Yeah, honestly, that would have been an easy win a year ago on this.
And
I did still get complaints about what if I have a grad party when I
Right.
propose this to the neighborhood, but.
Oh, yeah. Well, so were either the adults you were speaking to the residents of houses that we see?
Yes, and one of them was the one who said, well, I have people over, and I said, well, they'll have to park on the other side of your driveway.
Park on Park Hill Circle.
And they understood, but, they weren't hyped about that part of it.
Maybe they could let us build a sidewalk on their streets.
Those two residents are not against the sidewalk, so
Which
I'll give them credit for that.
Well, that would be really good to just run the sidewalk from the path, the south path to the right to Park Hill Circle. And run another sidewalk from the north path to the left to that driveway.
Yep, and that is the final intent here, that's on my next slide.
Okay, would that be, well, I was just talking about sidewalks, but you're gonna talk about paths, right?
Yes.
Okay, go on to the next slide then when you're ready.
So, just to kind of reiterate, quick build projects are a stopgap. This gets stuff, this makes this intersection safer for path users right now. In the timeline section of this, this is gonna happen probably next week. Mark's gonna paint this and put the posts up. This will cost about $1,500. It's about $1,000 for the posts, and then 2 guys, probably about 8 hours, plus what the paint costs. And also, we're moving the stop signs. I don't think I said that in this meeting. We're moving the stop signs to be a normal all-way stop at Park Hill Circle. So we're eliminating the stop sign at the west crosswalk and moving it to Park Hill Circle. In the midterm, 3+ years, it would be pretty easy to do a grade separated path, either in the street where this on-street path is, where you basically just move the curb and replace the posts with curb and have it be at the level of the grass, or kind of cheat into the yards a little bit on that is a possibility as well. There are some slope issues with the house to the south where we would have to.
Could you go back to the diagram?
Yeah.
The map. Yeah.
So there's some slope issues here to get our standard path section in 5 feet from the road and then a 10-foot path. We'd probably have to take out this tree and then some of this flower bed because this is not flat here. And we'd have to put in a short retaining wall probably.
Which is why the long-term cost is as expensive as it is.
Yep.
Well, and that's not sidewalk. Like, that's, even though you're widening the street and changing the grade, that doesn't count as a sidewalk. From
Not in the whole neighborhood.
From the standpoint of the ordinance and from the standpoint of what you
So
can do.
I will be asking that question to our city attorney if and when we do that midterm solution.
Okay.
But both of the current homeowners are in support of it. So we need 75% of affected residents to say yes to it.
And we got 100 right now.
We've got 100%.
Okay.
So
Got it.
But that's for sidewalk, for multi-use path.
that's for multi-use path.
It is
For
a-
sidewalk,
Yeah.
this long-term solution I have here, 5+ years plus an ordinance change. This cost is for sidewalk along both sides of Schumann from Osmondson to Seminole Highway.
Oh, okay.
And retaining walls probably part of the way.
Yep.
Okay, I would just question your use of grade separated. I think of that as being a bridge. But you're just saying that it's not street level, it's curb top level.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. All right. It's a grade separated path, but it's not a grade separated crossing. A
Correct.
crossing would be a bridge or a tunnel.
Correct.
Okay. Good, anything
But
else?
I would probably put in a raised crosswalk too.
Yep, yep.
That's, yeah,
That's
happy
it?
to take questions, comments on this.
So I saw this at the Bike and Ped meeting where it was presented as a fait accompli as projects affecting the Bike and Ped network. I am concerned about the proposed solution. The main part that concerns me is that I am a very confident bicyclist who does not mind being in traffic. However, going west in that shared lane next to the eastbound motor traffic with a closing speed of 40 miles an hour really drives me crazy. We have that situation on Netherwood Road in the north edge of Oregon, where coming out of the Conservancy from the south, there's posts for a couple hundred feet or 100 feet maybe, but then the rest of it all the way to Burr Oak, there's no posts, it's just paint separating you from the oncoming traffic. So I did ask whether the two-way thoroughfare is for biking, walking, or both. And the answer is, it depends. It's definitely for walking, but it's only for biking if you're coming from the north path and going to the south path, or vice versa. If you're on Schumann, you would use that to go eastbound, but if you're going westbound on Schumann, you're going to be up in the 14-foot travel lane.
And so just to be clear, if you're going westbound on Schumann, you can use this facility.
You have to cross the street.
I just don't think anybody's gonna cross the street twice to do that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep.
I
And
just wanna make it clear that it's allowed, but we're not
It's
anticipating it. Yeah.
but people are not gonna cross. We worry about people crossing the street twice on a great big long block, and they're never gonna do it for 100 feet. So, and I thought, well, maybe it could be walking only, and that the people who are going eastbound on bikes would also use that lane. And then the complexity of the situation started to make me wonder about how are kids gonna know how to navigate this? And you're not showing any signage, but there might be some.
There will be.
Okay.
And there will be arrows. I mean, I'm gonna walk through with Mark and our streets crew, like painting arrows on the paths and how we actually want to do that. I think probably a right turn arrow on the northbound path and probably no arrow on the southbound path.
So this came out in Jake's newsletter, and I responded to him and copied Ross and said, I really don't like this for this reason. And Jake wrote back and said, thank you for your concern, but please let the staff do it. I want this done right away. But before he did that, I went down a rat hole, and I have an alternative solution that I'd like to throw out. It's cheaper, but it's cheaper because it doesn't use posts, and the posts have already been ordered. But
The posts are at the shop right now.
yeah, so, or they've been received and paid for. I was gonna propose I'm blanking right now, advisory lanes. So what would happen here is you keep both crosswalks, they both still be white. You would use yield controls, and I have yield shark's teeth there, set back. So if you're not familiar, yield lines are lines of triangles, and the flat part of the triangle is away from you and the points point at you. So these would be dashed lines, and there would be no posts, and both the bike traffic would always be in the advisory lane, and it would always be on the right side. And you would cross if you were going from one of the paths or going to one of the paths, you would cross at the appropriate far crosswalk, so you would stay on the right side. The pedestrians, pedestrians have been taught to walk against traffic when there's no sidewalks. And so these advisory lanes, and they're not called advisory bike lanes if pedestrians may also use them, and they're not marked as bike lanes. They're marked typically as bike routes. But pedestrians, unlike bike lanes, pedestrians are allowed to walk in them, and they would be able to walk in either direction. So if they preferred to face traffic and so on, just like pedestrians walk either direction on a sidewalk. I have a bunch of other things here. I would have bike and ped signs in the yellow-green color, and I would post this stretch for 20 miles an hour at the ends of the what I call the no parking zone, where you show the no parking things. So I have a feeling that I'm spitting into the wind here, that you know, when it comes to alder pressure on staff, that can be very effective, and I think that this is going to go in next Friday or whenever you said. But I'm just going to give you this and take it for what it's worth. I see, if you look at the property lines, if you had a single crosswalk where the property line is, and if you could just use your cursor where that no parking, middle no parking sign on the north side is right there. So you could deflect that path almost to there, and you would only have to deflect the south path. You would want to deflect it to the same point, but it would only go over current private property for a short distance. And so that would be the long-term solution. I don't know if you could get it so it would be perpendicular to the road, or if it would still be at an angle like that crosswalk here is shown. And a raised crosswalk, I think, is a good solution. And I think motorists would be more accepting of a yield control than a stop control, because they would slow down for the raised crosswalk. So this is the medium term. This could be the long-term solution too, because you could still come in later and put those sidewalks all the way up and down for the $500,000. But so those were my concerns, and I wanted to ask Ariel, since this is Pat's. So did you have any comments or thoughts on this?
I mean, I guess I don't see a ton of paths like this situation. A lot of times we're building brand new paths that, you know, tie into each other. So I have never come across this before. I thought it was a creative solution. I guess I didn't see too many issues with it. So with the stop sign that's getting moved up to like the white crosswalk, would the bikes and pedestrians be using that stop sign, or are they given the right of way to cross before any of the cars would come through?
So in my mind, I don't know how this is covered by the actual state law governing crosswalks and stop signs. But in my mind, bikes and pedestrians would be having to turn left here, so they would be turning to kind of look at oncoming traffic.
Point where you're showing us.
If you're going eastbound here and then turning north.
Yep.
So you would be, you know, coming with traffic and then turning to go across. So you would be seeing the traffic coming, which would have to stop. So the pedestrian or the bike would have the right of way because the car has to stop there.
Because they'll be in the crosswalk.
Yes, they're obviously not coming from a curb ramp, and Wisconsin state law kind of designates crosswalks as having curb ramps on both sides, which this one will not have.
No, only the unmarked ones have curb ramps on both sides. If you mark a crosswalk, it doesn't have to have a curb ramp or be going anyplace. I think. I mean, I've read this.
I would have to double check that, honestly.
But I think a marked crosswalk is a crosswalk. If it's an unmarked crosswalk, then they start looking at things like curb ramps and destinations and things.
Either way, cars have to stop here. And generally what happens is pedestrians kind of take the right of way at a car stop sign. So that's what I'm anticipating happening.
Yeah, I was just like thinking if there's a bike and a car kind of coming into the intersection at the same time. Like if the car doesn't see the bike or.
The DOT interpretation of the statute, which they've published in a couple of different places, says that once a bike obeys the stop or yield sign that may be facing them and is operating in the crosswalk at a speed consistent of safe pedestrian travel, typically starting up from a stop off the curb, they have the rights of a pedestrian and the motorist must stop.
Is your question about, maybe what I'm hearing is the bike and the car going the same direction on Schumann, both going eastbound? So you have your bike and you have a car like over your left shoulder, and you intend to turn left and go. It's not the cars that are coming at you at the stop sign, it's the one that's like right there.
Yes, that's what I was.
Yeah.
The overtaking.
Yep.
Just worried about someone like the bike going in front of the car. If.
We'd sure want them to signal,
Yes, which effectively is no different than what happens right now.
right?
Yeah, unless.
Except
Well,
for
what
there's no
happens
stop sign
right
for the
now-
car
In the middle of the street as opposed to being way over on.
Yeah, if it's me, you scan and then you signal left and then you move to the left edge of your lane, right of the center line. And then you scan again and signal again and then you turn left from the left edge of the lane. Here you do not have the opportunity necessarily to go from the left edge of the lane.
Right.
And a bike could take the option of taking the travel lane if they knew they were gonna turn left when they're eastbound on Schumann.
Yes, legally they could do that, yes.
There has been a thing, and I'm forgetting who was mentioning it to me several times. It might have been Logan, might have been Andy Potts, this business about when you, this is unrelated to this specific situation, but germane to our discussion, when you have a stop sign on a side street approaching a major street, and that major street has a side path. So you can think about coming out of the subdivisions on Fish Hatchery Road or coming out of the McGaw Park access road with that access path, or that multi-use path. There is a stop sign for motor vehicles before the path crossing. And there is also a stop sign on the path. So it's an always stop from the point of view of the bicyclist. Did you bring this up?
No, but it sounds very smart, so I wish I had.
Yeah, so we tend to not, stop signs for motor vehicles in that situation have marked all way so that you don't have a deadlock situation. People know they're coming up to an all-way stop. If somebody else comes up at the same time, you look at the other driver and you kind of negotiate who's gonna go first. But the question was, why should there be a stop sign on the path in that situation if there's a stop sign for the motorist before the path? Why can't and the answer, of course, is because they're coming from the left. They're coming from the right where a motorist might not be looking, but
So
what's your view?
in my opinion, Fitchburg has too many stop signs on multi-use paths. Leading to the situation you're
Bless you
describing.
for thinking that.
It is very difficult both politically and with community feedback to remove a stop sign that's already there, whether it's on a bike path or on a road. I think there are a lot of situations for paths where I think it would honestly create a safer situation because cars would not be expecting bikes to stop, and frankly, bikes don't always stop at those stop signs because there's loss of momentum and stuff like that that you don't have in a motor vehicle.
I would say, instead of not always, I'd say almost never.
Yes.
I was trying to be generous.
And also at there's locations in neighborhoods where you can have an uncontrolled intersection or a yield controlled intersection and be perfectly fine with two streets crossing and people don't have to stop, you don't have to waste gas. But it's really hard to just go in and say, oh, there's no stop sign here anymore. People are like, oh, that's less safe, which sometimes might be true, sometimes might not. So.
Okay, well, this is gonna happen, so thank you for presenting it.
I did want to bring a couple
Any more on
comments forward that Alder Jetzer had made too. So credit where credit is due.
He's the one that keeps.
It does sound like a Bill thing.
Yeah.
It does, yeah.
Because he's the one that stopped. And it's one of the reasons that people prefer bike lanes over side paths is because the side paths have all stop signs. Back to you.
So if you are in the green crosswalk on this map here, and you are making that left onto Schumann to head west, you're coming down that hill. There may be a stop sign on the path, there may not.
There is right now, and I'm not planning on taking it out with this.
Okay. Are the flex posts enough, do you think, to provide some kind of narrowing to, I guess, if a kid were to still run through that stop sign going fast on their bike down that hill, this doesn't prevent them from doing it. It does give that driver that extra fraction of a second to react if a bike does come flying out of there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty negligible.
But
I am planning on putting a flex post in the center of that crosswalk or bike facility because it's not intended for pedestrians there. So I'm anticipating that slowing down bikers at least a little bit.
Okay.
If if a kid comes down that hill and hits that flex post, we might have to take it out. But yeah.
Okay. And yeah, because I'm just looking at it, it looked like the flex posts here are shown on the sides, not the middle. And so I was curious about the middle, but then I thought the same thing about if a kid runs into it. I mean, flex post isn't that expensive to replace, but would that be enough?
Fall off the bike.
I was gonna say, yeah, is that enough to knock the kid over or?
Yes.
For sure.
Okay.
How will flex posts be handled in the winter?
So about 3 or 4 of these will be removable. So we have the option to either bolt these into the asphalt or use thermoplastic, which is the same as you do for, it's the same as you use for heat activated pavement marking.
Yep.
So you basically heat it with a butyl torch to put it in, and then you heat it with a butyl torch to take it out. So about 3 of these will need to be removable so the parks plow can come down this hill and make the right turn to plow this section of path and then come up here and plow that. So, the parks plow already does this because they plow both these paths on the same route. The only difference is
Now the
streets
plow
plow
is gonna leave a windrow.
Right, and I was a little bit worried about this, but the sequencing already works out. The streets usually gets to here early in their route, and parks is usually later in their route. So streets will clear the snow onto this path, and then an hour or whatever later, parks will come clear it into the grass.
Very good.
And then I'll just make one quick comment, and politically I may get myself into some trouble for this here, but I feel like I can make the risk because it's not in my district, but it just has been grating on me a little bit since I've seen this in the packet that there was a room full of 100 people 10 years ago saying, we don't want sidewalks, we don't want sidewalks, the streets are perfectly safe to walk on, we don't need anything else. And here we are now in the situation we're in.
That's why I wanted the advisory lanes, because they look a little bit like sidewalks.
And that's not to the specific homeowners on either side here, especially since you said, it sounds like that they would not have been filling the room with torches and pitchforks. But it just is something I wanted to verbalize come hell or high water for me, but it just felt a little bit hypocritical if I would go that far.
2016, I remember it well.
No, yes, granted, 10 years ago, but
If you wanna collaborate on writing that, resolution,
To-
rescinding that, I will write that tomorrow.
Because I know that was another point of conversation in the CIP as well for a path along Sherrill
Sherrill,
between
yeah,
Fish
Sherrill.
Hatch and McKee Farms Park. Because it would mostly cut through Tower Hill Park and almost, I think the vast majority of it was already on city property. Either
Nice.
Tower Hill Park or,
9 lots.
I think it was only 8, but
It's,
6, yeah, same difference.
yes, but we do need acceptance from all 20, however many 20 whatever lots, because we won't assess for that sidewalk when it gets put in, but we would assess when it gets replaced. So we do need 75% of 24 lots or whatever it is.
The other thing is that they came down the other side of Sherrill Drive a few years ago and put in a storm sewer and wiped out all the landscaping and everything, and that would have been a perfect time to put in a sidewalk. Had there not been a firestorm 8 years ago.
And and I don't want to belabor the point, but I just, it's the same argument I hear when I hear people say we want a grocery store, but we don't want any of the traffic that comes with the grocery store. It's you.
Yep.
If I want to eat ice cream for dinner, I'm gonna get a stomach ache, and that's the price I have to pay.
So, your discussion item didn't ask for any input on the design, you only asked for input on whether this type of project was something that we were supportive of. And I wanna say, I think that this is a good use of some quick action and low amount of money.
Yes.
And so I commend you for doing this as like a quick solution. I don't think anybody here would say this is the perfect solution and this should just be here forever. I do wonder how we'll measure success versus non-success. Like what would cause us to take it out? But other than, step E. Of
Emails to alders.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of metrics involved in this, because like I said, the one metric that I used, I didn't do any counts, but it's rolling through those stop signs. I could have done a count there, I didn't feel like I needed to, because every time I stood out there, it happened.
Certainly, some people will say that they don't like it.
Yeah,
And so you will get some feedback like that. And other people may say, oh, this is great, this is, my kids understand exactly how to use this, that sort of thing. So I don't know, like, how we here can help or not about like, do this for 3 months and then take it out or just put it there and then leave it there until we get some money to do something else. Or
that's the intent for this. It's not intended to be temporary.
Yeah, unless
we get the money to do it.
Well, or something like large comes in to like say, don't do this anymore or plowing or whatever. So anyway, that was the feedback that you were looking for is what I'm trying to give you.
Yep, agreed.
Thumbs up.
All right.
Okay, let's talk about the budget.
So I think, Steve, are you gonna go through this PowerPoint, or how did you wanna do this?
Well, I did not.
I can go through it too.
Go ahead, that would be great.
So this is a PowerPoint that Jamie Acton, the Metro Transit General Manager, gave as a mid-year budget update, because Metro Transit, once again, is looking at a budget deficit. 2025.
Who's the audience?
That I am
I
not
think
sure.
it was to Madison's Finance Committee or Transportation Commission.
I thought it was the Transportation Commission.
One of the two out there. That the State Journal reported on it, and then that's how I saw it. Sent to Ross and Steve.
So 2025, a lot of news stories about their budget deficit, $5.7 million. They're looking at $4.2 million projected budget deficit in 2026. They've got some details in here about why that is and how that came to be. The main part for Fitchburg is on this next slide. The purchase of service, contracts, fares, and passes, I'm a little bit unclear whether it's intergovernmental, federal and state funds, or.
I think the lower one is the transit grants from the state and feds, and the green one is us.
That was how I
Yeah.
understood it.
So either way, it's about 30%. That's where we come into this. So they're looking at a budget deficit. They're not charging their partners enough to cover their costs, which that's not in this presentation, but I'll get into that in a minute with other information that I got today. So it's not in your packet. But it's in this revenue update portion. So they're basically service contracts are not structured to cover the actual costs. That's the main Fitchburg part of this.
They're structured to cover the actual costs from a previous year, is that it? Because that's how
Yeah, that's how it's intended to be.
Yeah.
But for the past several years,
the inflation has been a lot
Fitchburg
bigger.
has been underpaying for our transit service. So this is pretty Madison specific, because Fitchburg gets federal funding very differently than Madison does. This is how the major factors, they're high on overtime, high on bus parts because they've ordered so many buses at one time that they're hitting all their service intervals for the buses at the same time. All their buses have 500,000 miles or whatever it is, and you need to replace the brakes at that point. And then paratransit is also just more expensive, and is getting used more than has been anticipated.
Will help with that too, if we ever get our routes.
So this is what they're looking at for looking ahead. They're monitoring their interdepartmental, or they're monitoring their department spending very closely. They've basically shut off P cards for their department, from my understanding, and they're reviewing purchasing much more closely. And they're looking to begin conversations on service contract increases. That's a Q3 activity.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating getting into that very soon.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, the P card is not until Q4.
So I think right now they have cut off most people's P cards, and I think in October they are cutting off everyone's P card. That's my interpretation here, but don't necessarily quote me on that. Like I think Jamie's P card still works right now, but it might not in October. So how this affects Fitchburg, I got our 2025 audited share audit information today. It's required 30 days after June 30th, which now we're obviously about 45 days after that, or 30 days after Metro has that information available. So we'll chalk it up to they had it available on the 13th of July and go from there. So in that audit, which I will put up on the screen now, this shows our 2025 cost of service. That's what we were billed and paid to Metro. 2025 audited share is the actual cost of the service that Metro provided to Fitchburg, based on all the calculation available in our contract. And then 2026 cost of service and 2027 cost of service.
And those are estimates.
Those are estimates.
Yeah.
So in 2025, Fitchburg underpaid and was undercharged by Metro by 20.73%. So we paid $429,590 less than our service actually cost Metro to provide to us in 2025. So that means that in 2027, our cost of service will increase by 3% based on our current contract. And if you remember in that slideshow, Metro is looking to renegotiate partner contracts starting in Q4 of 2026. So I don't anticipate this 3% number holding.
Right.
I anticipate our transit budget needing to increase by about 20.7%.
Before we add any route hours.
before we add any route
Can you
numbers.
say why we had more audited route hours than was expected in any of the 3 years? Was that a route change?
That I'm not sure. There weren't any major route changes in between when this contract was signed and now.
The D1? So
That's
this
the
was,
biggest one.
yeah,
That-
this
that
was
reduced our
after,
hours.
this was after the reorg. All 3 of these years was after the redesign of the system.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So,
And the D1 change gave us less hours, I thought.
correct.
Same hours, but more of them were in Madison.
So, yeah, we have 678 more bus hours than we anticipated and a $16.95 per hour higher bus cost than we anticipated. So $382,000 higher in the fixed route bus category. Then for paratransit, we were 7,282 paratransit hours over our estimate. So paratransit is getting used more than we anticipated by almost 50%.
The paratransit number is not on the screen or I'm
It
sorry,
is.
oh, here it is. Oh, I see. Okay.
So we anticipated 16,000 hours and we are actually, or miles, and we're actually using 23,600 miles.
Good thing we're only paying half as much per mile.
Yes, but also the cost of paratransit per mile is $3.58 per mile lower than we anticipated.
Right.
So that equates to a $16,500 paratransit savings.
Yeah.
So add those together, you get to the $365,597 overage.
And just to be clear on what Fitchburg paid exactly what our contract stipulated that it paid.
Yes,
And
Fitchburg paid $2,034,931 in 2025.
It's not like we owe them some money because we didn't pay a bill or something. We paid exactly what we were obligated to pay.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And
So the big
based on
problem.
our contract structure, underpaying at all basically means that our contract goes up by 3%.
Right, that's the max that it can
That's the
go up
max it can increase.
per year.
Yeah,
And
and
it was established for 2025 based on what 2024 actuals were.
Yes, which is this $63,993. So that was our underpay in 2024, which based on our contract does not increase or decrease because that's a much lower percentage.
Well, that's right, so
underpay.
it didn't change because it didn't like jump 3%, it just basically stayed the same. And yet
Relatively flat.
costs. And if you went back to your slide presentation for just a moment to the main drivers on slide 6, overtime, something we have no control over, and bus parts, something we have no control over. In a way, and a skeptic could argue this is mismanagement. The paratransit one you can't really predict. You don't know how much demand there will be for paratransit.
Mhm.
But the other two were things that were outside of our control and were well in excess of what they had budgeted for. And now they're telling us, oh, look how short Fitchburg is for its piece of this. But both of those, and I'm shocked how old.
But to be clear, the bus parts do not factor in at all to our audit. The overtime and the paratransit do, because the overtime is part of why our bus hours cost per hour is higher, because some of that has been overtime.
But why wouldn't the bus parts, which would be operating expenses, not capital, not be a part of their?
Because our contract does not have us pay for bus parts.
Bus parts also, isn't that one of those specialized federal categories that they get money from feds from?
Yes.
Okay. We don't have to answer that right here, but also who buys a 60-foot bus and with like a 2-year warranty or or something like that. I mean, how old are these buses? That's all the warranty you get on a bus like that.
There's 2 American bus manufacturers, they have to buy American buses. Yeah, it's a little bit of a monopoly situation.
Anyway.
Go into the bus business, electric bus business.
I guess. Let's meet after this and talk about putting that together.
So when we, looking forward now, seeing these numbers, and I appreciate you having very recent data that we can make these informed decisions. One of the big questions I had when I first saw this headline and wanted to put this on the agenda was, what does this mean for expanding 65 and 75 to all-day service? Regardless of the process change that Metro has had public meetings to discuss, it seems to me that part of the reason, or part of the way we were planning to fund that, the money that we added to the Metro, or to our transit budget, if you will, from the vehicle registration fee, this is about the same dollar amount. So if we have either, I'm seeing this as either 2 options, either increase in the 27 budget the city's contribution to transit by what, 300, 400 some $1,000s?
So just one second
Yes,
to go
please.
over that. So the amount that our 2027 cost of service will increase is from this $2,142,515 to $2,206,790. So we are not responsible for paying Metro this $365,000 that we're short by.
They claim that, or they overspent and they say this was our part of their overspending.
We are only paying about $60,000 more in 2027.
And is that because the contract is still
It's capped.
in effect?
Yes.
For some reason, I thought it expired this year.
So if it goes past the expiration date and is not canceled by either party, it automatically renews.
I see, which would cap it at 3%
Yes.
based on the terms of the
Continues to
contract.
cap and continues to leave Madison holding this bag,
Right. Yes.
which they will, which will be very unpopular politically for them to continue to hold.
Sure.
So we should expect them to, as they say, want to renegotiate this.
Yeah.
I would expect at a minimum, they would want to raise the cap. Because, well, I mean, look at fuel cost is a huge part of the inflation.
Not all of them. There are still diesel buses in the fleet, but and hybrid.
Good point. But, yes. But that's a big deal, because diesel's gone up a lot.
But yeah, so I appreciate the clarification, and it makes me think that maybe this isn't as big of a problem in 27, but knowing that we were already in the process of, in this room, we have already reviewed things we want to see different in the contract, that there are things that we think, that, and I was gonna say we think, but I would say we really ought to have, i.e. more say in routes like the D1 getting changed route from under us. If we want that, we're gonna have to offer something. I think this is what we're gonna have to offer, is raising that cap at a minimum.
The other thing is that if you're expected to pay a percentage of somebody else's managed process of their costs, it would be a very legitimate request to say, oh, we would like to look into your, I mean, I'm not saying Fitchburg has the capacity to do this, but it would be a very fair ask to say, let's see your books and see if we can help you sharpen your pencils, because you're passing this cost on to us. So I think that a cap is one way we're protected from the fact that we don't get to tell them how. We're contracting for services. We're not partners in this. We're partners nominally, but we're not partners in the legal sense, where we get to help manage and make decisions about what they do operationally.
Nobody asked us if they should buy
Yeah,
more
we
buses.
might have better ideas on hiring bus drivers to get overtime down.
I do think just with that, I think this brings up a good point to push for regional transit authority, where Fitchburg might actually have more say in this rather than just contracting with Madison.
Sure.
It'll all happen in November.
This is, from my recollection, the contracts were structured so that our contract and Monona's contract and Sun Prairie's contract would all have the same structure to them, so they'd all have whatever cap. So can Madison at this point negotiate with one partner in isolation, or do all the partners that have service from Metro need to kind of be on the same page with regard to what they are and are not willing to do?
So
We
that
don't have a-
next contract may not hold that same, every partner needs the same contract. I think that's been the past few contracts, but it may not hold for the next
When
one.
we did that, we had a forum. We had a official City of Madison subcommittee that all the partners were represented on. And while we didn't have the final say, we reported up to Common Council, or to the transit. They had a transit commission in those days, and we were the shared services subcommittee or something, I forget the exact name. But now we don't have a forum. There is one person who is on a working group. I think is it you or?
No.
That there's somebody from one of the partner communities that has to technically represent us all. And, that's not a good solution if our contracts are gonna diverge.
And I think this is just information I know. There are other partner municipalities who are way overpaying. So they will have completely different approaches to the contract renegotiation than we will.
Is this public information where we would also be able to see the Monona and the Sun Prairie document?
That I don't know.
I mean, I feel like if we dug around through their minutes of their version of this committee, we could find it, or open records request, or if you really wanted to.
Right, yeah, it'd just be curious to sort of see that structure too.
Yeah.
But it's something that occurred to me just when you asked about why did the hours go up that much, or fixed route vehicle hours. Was the annexation of the town of Madison in part the Fitchburg?
That was included in this. That was part of the network redesign.
Okay, so that was already accounted for in the expected
Yeah, that was
cost.
2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the network redesign was late 2023.
Okay. And by the way, Logan, something that occurred to me, and I don't know why I just had this aha moment last week or so. We were talking about the 65 and 75 and how that's kind of been a can kicked down the road, and we've been asking for it. And then we said, we can pay for this because the wheel tax that's been implemented in Fitchburg. And then I saw this, and I had this realization, like, actually, the total cost of doing that goes beyond just what Fitchburg would pay, because the buses would run, both those buses would run in Madison as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so by asking for that, we are also asking for them to increase their costs of those routes. And I just didn't have that realization until a week ago. It's like not just what we're willing to pay for, but they had to be willing to pay more to run those buses all day long.
When Rick and I were solving transportation problems at the coffee shop, I pointed out, well, I know that the 75 on off-peak is not going to Verona, it's staying in Fitchburg. So I wondered, and Ross, maybe you know, would the 65 go to the new Hughes Place BRT station and then come back to Fitchburg to connect with BRT and not go all the way to the hospital during non-peak hours?
That's not what we had talked about the last time we talked about 65. It's a possibility.
Yeah, because I would be very happy to transfer to the BRT line.
And that's fine.
I think that makes sense to minimize the amount of addition in Madison if you don't
Madison
wanna
will
do it.
know, or Metro will know whether it makes sense to run whatever letter the new 65 would have all the way to the hospital.
I mean, there
I
are.
do think we probably shouldn't get into like 65 and 75 routing in this item.
That's
Just,
Okay.
yeah.
Then I'll put a pin in that. I
True
will
that.
say, from looking at the budget from the council side of things, that this, every year, our levy limit only goes up by the rate of net new construction. I think our number's like 2.5, 2.6, somewhere in there. And as you've probably heard, there are staffing challenges with the police department and the fire department, health insurance for employees. So it would be tough, even as somebody who rides the transit system regularly and is an advocate for expanding this service, it would be tough to find the money. When if we did all those things, we've already spent more than what the net new construction is. So it would be tough to use what, the cushion that we've already built in, assuming we were going to have 65 and 75 by now. It'd be tough to use that to expand the service and add a liability to our budget line items. The priority has been maintaining existing services of all kinds as much as possible before adding new. So that, to me, when I saw this, my first thought was 65 and 75 are not going to have all-day service in the short term. But maybe that's the pessimist in me. But even if it's not increasing up to, we don't have to pay that 365 back, but even if we have to absorb another 3, 4, 5%, whatever we renegotiate, whatever that looks like, that's just wiggle room we don't have.
Tell me if I'm wrong, that we've already made a formal request, and that even though like Madison sort of changed the rules about how the request process change goes through, that it, in my mind, was still an active pursuit that staff was discussing with the city of Madison. Like, are we at a point where we're telling them, stop asking for this?
I would say that we are allocating wheel tax money to transit.
Right.
There may be a decision by the council who has to make all these final decisions that we can't afford to do what we wanted to do. But I still think that we should be extending 65 and B and 75 so they all meet during the peak hours at least. And then once you've done that, you don't have, it's not an all or nothing thing. You can add runs. In principle, there's workforce issues about this too, but you for example, you could run all day but not in the evening, and you could not run on the weekends and things like that. Now that flies in the face of, we want a simple system so people will understand it and ride it. And having buses that have all weird different schedules is a bad thing. But I would say that the two big steps are extend the endpoints and then extend the hours. And I don't think that we've rescinded that request, right?
No, but
Because
all this information on the screen,
Yeah,
I sent to Misty and Chad at 3 p.m. today.
yeah.
So
So they'll be coming back
saying
to us
that
to talk
it
more.
hasn't been rescinded yet is not a,
Yeah, but yeah, the real answer for all of this, all municipalities are in the levy limit vice. Things go up with net new construction plus inflation, and we can only raise levies net new construction. And so again, we hope for better results in November because the state has a surplus and they can tax more too than they do because they've been cutting taxes. And so there will be, these problems are going to have political potential solutions.
And based on the current structures in which we operate, it would be difficult for me, I think, to move forward with adding too many more liabilities to the list. And some of them were just not financially, even if, we wanted to, I think are not financially feasible.
All right, that should do it for that item. We've discussed plenty.
On that cheerful note.
Let's have a quick council update. And also, if you know, oftentimes it overlaps with plans, so.
Yes, so.
Gabriela's resting her eyeballs after looking at the eclipse.
Yeah. So I'll start with August 11th, our most recent meeting on Tuesday. We already talked about the Fitchburg Road tree clearing bid, which we approved. Approved a couple of park-related items. I don't think we'll have major transportation or transit-related impacts. Let's see. I think that's about the extent of our 11th meeting. The meeting on the 28th was when we voted on and approved the 2027 to 2036 Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. I'm trying to remember I don't think there were any major updates relating to transportation or transit other than my amendments related to some of the sewer for Irish Lane. It was just everything else for Irish Lane got pushed back a year, but that one just got missed. So it was just to kind of realign everything back up.
The other item was the Cheryl Drive sidewalk that we talked about earlier in this meeting.
Oh, yes.
That was an amendment.
Yes, so that amendment was added.
Did it pass?
It did.
Okay.
Recognizing again that the only way that moves forward is if we meet that 75% threshold.
Or rescind the.
Yes. I think one of those is more likely than the other. Both of them are not likely.
Very likely.
Let's see. I think there was quite a few direct referrals because we didn't have our first council meeting in July. A few rezones, small things for a couple of rural properties that won't have any major transportation or transit related impacts. We also approved a preliminary plat request for the Nine Springs, or the syncopation development off MM in the Cleanfill site. No major changes to that from when we've seen it previously, other than changing part of one of the private streets to a public street and then reconfiguring it so it flows better into the area to the south, which is the Osborne property that may develop into another neighborhood at some point. And this would help it connect from MM to Lacey without needing a private road connection. There was some discussion at one point about having a Metro Transit stop in that development, and Ross, if I'm remembering correctly, that was deemed not feasible. So if transit were to be added there, it would probably be a stop on MM, and then using the bike and ped underpass to get from the stop on the east side of MM heading northbound. You use the underpass to get into the neighborhood, or at a signalized intersection.
Or it could, that's adding it to the 65, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the route? Is it E that goes through Southdale?
G, I think.
G, and would it be more feasible for that to cover that area, or is it too far south?
It's too far south, and it would probably still. The whole reason it can't go into the development and stop on a local street is because Metro doesn't want to have those diversions. So adding that to the G instead would be the same issue.
Yeah.
But it'd be longer.
And this, the 65 already, passes right by it. It just doesn't
Does
stop.
65 come down MM?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it came down the 14.
No,
It's on MM.
it would be a stop along the existing route. There'd be no need to deviate.
That
It
makes
wouldn't
much
change
more
any of
sense
our
to me.
budgetary things unless that 10-second stop adds to our route hours too much. There was also an amendment from Alder Lattice to correct the future project cost for the Osmondson Road traffic signals and just put money in the CIP for 2036 for those signals. I think that's really
our
needed.
annual moving that back 1 year, right?
Well, that's a new project this year.
Okay.
But there was an error with the CIP software where it cut off the last year. And most projects, there's not anything in the last year, but this one, there was, and I missed adding it back in.
And I'll just really quickly, I can look through the plan and see if there's anything that we didn't have in, that I didn't mention before. They did approve on their meeting on July 21st, the rezone and ADR accessory architecture design review for the next phase of Grace's Dementia Village. That's the actual Dementia Village part. The first phase was updating the existing facility to move everybody into one half to then make way for the Dementia Village, which is planned to begin construction this fall. We already talked about that preliminary plat. I think the only other thing I'd mention is that the comprehensive plan process is moving. So there's community opportunities for community members to get involved and help shape that process. So I would just encourage you over the next 2 years to stay updated on what the comprehensive plan will look like, especially with that transportation and transit focus.
Thank you, sir, for filling in for Gabriella. I went to the Bike and Ped, so I will report. Phil presented the same Schumann Park Hill Circle, whatever that is, thing that Russ presented to us. There was no report on progress for biking on sidewalks. The city attorney has a term sheet that the Bike and Ped Commission proposed to make it legal under certain circumstances to ride on sidewalks. But there's a queue at the city attorney's office to draft ordinances, I guess. There is work proceeding for a number of biking and or walking tours around Fitchburg. And the one that might happen first is a sustainability walking tour of Terravessa by an expert who will talk about the various stormwater innovations and monitoring innovations. If you've been over there, you've seen all the infiltration in the medians, and there's also underground infiltration. There was no report on B-Cycle. We are continuing to clutch our pearls about what's going to happen with B-Cycle at the end of 27. We thought we bought the stations, but not according to them. So we'll find out about that. And Bike Fitchburg I made a presentation on behalf of Bike Fitchburg. I had this as a handout, so if you can look at it and then pass them over. But Bike Fitchburg had its regular monthly meeting in Oregon at the Bodie Howe Coffee Shop and Oregon Bicycle Company Bike Shop. And we went over 2 CIP projects. One's in the CIP, which is connecting the Rotary Trail to Purcell Road so that people could get from Oregon to the Badger, endpoints north and south. And the other project, it is not yet in the CIP, but I hope to get into the next one, is the connection of North Main Street in the Village of Oregon to our South Saline Road side path along 14 and the rail line and Irish Lane and so on. And we were down there to foment the creation of advocacy organization for biking and walking in Oregon so that they could push the Oregon end of those 2 projects, and it was amazing. We had 40 people show up. It looks like the point person for Oregon will be Steve Staten, who was village president for 12 years, 6 terms, and he knows everybody, and he was involved in the current Oregon Rotary Trail creation. So that was a very nice meeting, and so I reported that out to the Bike and Ped Commission. And I don't have anything else called out for what happened there. I will make an announcement. Any questions on that? Tuesday is bicycle-friendly business announcement day. So watch out for new announcements from Bike Fitchburg and the city about new bicycle-friendly businesses around here. Our other announcement is that we will next meet on September 10th.
I have one quick question on that. Have we canceled one meeting yet this year?
We've canceled one, but not two, as I recall.
And I will not be in attendance at the September meeting.
Okay. So can you give me a heads up in say 2 weeks about whether there's gonna be council items, and then we can maybe cancel that one if there's.
I'm not anticipating council items right now, because the only other big thing is the TIA
Okay.
ordinance, and that's going
We're
through
done with
council in the
that.
next meeting, yeah.
Okay, so right now, is anybody dying to have that September meeting?
Would we then have the December meeting?
Yes, but it's the second week in December, so it's not that close to Christmas.
Okay.
It would be December 10th, so it's pretty early, honestly.
So, okay, so we might cancel September. All right. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. We stand adjourned.